wasn't chatting. Wasn't texting. What do you mean? What are you talking about? Lies. How's it going? How's everybody today? Let's see. Make sure we got everything ready. Looks good. And Kyle, hello. So Wednesday we did pods. Kind of just had a look at different ways of executing a pod. Yesterday we kind of poked into the deployment side of that, what you want to add and remove to get a deployment, and just the differences in automating the process of generating those manifest files. Today I was thinking I wanted to look at services. We may do a quick look at workload management. We did a little bit of that already, kind of just setting some limits, seeing what those limits look like, stuff like that. But I think our big focus this time is going to be network model. Another thing that might be interesting, and I'll probably try to make sure I poke around in it a little bit more this time, is to get into the log files. We'll do it on the primary, obviously. But just different things that you might see in those log files that could be pleasant, unpleasant, the right thing, the wrong thing, the huge. But services, load balancing, and networking. That's what I'm looking at today. Got a few left, huh? So let's start with service. So we've set up a couple of services on this channel in our time. Let's do a new tab. I don't remember. Can create a service. We can create a config map, a cron job, deployment ingress job. You can create the ingress and a service. All right. Let's extend that out a little bit. And look at what our options are here. So we can create a cluster IP, which that'll basically be this. Well, cluster IP isn't this, but this is where we'll start. I think default is cluster IP, which, yeah, that's what it's saying right here. So let's create a service. We'll just do cluster IP. And we're going to call it test service. And we're going to do the same thing as before. We're going to have the output. Oh, we need to do first try run equals client and output equals YAML. All right. Okay, we'll do this. Let's do there we go. So we would do TCP, we'll just say 80 in this case, since we've been using Nginx anyway. Oh, that's interesting. And we'll make it TCP. There we go. That's what it looks like. Let's compare that to what they've got here. So API version 1, kind service, metadata. It adds the creation timestamp, obviously. It also adds the labels for the name and all that fun stuff. The app has to match the name. There's got to be something more that you can do with these labels. Having it just automatically match, I'm not a fan of. I'd have to look into that a little bit more. Then we get into spec. We have the ports, 80. They start with the protocol TCP, target port 80, port 80, 80. Selector is the app, and then type, cluster IP. Although here it has my app as the selector. But again, that's where the having the labels be the same and jump around like that's kind of annoying. So else what we would rather have. Come back. There we go. All right. So let's bring you up, and we're going to send you to testservice.yaml. Let's get rid of the stuff that doesn't matter. Let's get rid of the labels. In this case, it's got a specific selector, but we're going to say, we are going to set it to test app. Get the name of 80. Port 80 protocol. Yeah, everything else there looks good. Status and the load balancer can go. And now we're closer to what they've got, right? They just don't have a name for the ports. Whoop-diddy-doo. Now in this case, our app is test app. So let's look at... Actually, I think we're doing it in Nginx, right? We're just going to change you to test app. Test app. And test app. All right. No pods running, and that kind of gives us an additional step in that we know already that we're in dev services, so cool. We're where we want to be. Let's apply. You. What? Oh, well. There we go. Much better. Gooder. Better. Whatever. And then let's apply the service. And let's take a look at what happened here. Actually, I think I have this set up so it's a little more restricted. Yeah, well, let me view the namespaces. All right, so I forgot we still have 10. Whoops. whatever. But now we have our test service here. And the app is test app. And let's go back to the pods. We should be test app. All right. Now on this service, we can forward you and open you in a browser. Hopefully. My port forwarding's been weird lately, ever since I started doing the security changes. But this could be hanging just because there's 10 of them. Nope. That's fine though. It takes us to the next stage, as it were. But let's come to our port forwarding. May not be available. All right. Goodbye. Let's go back to our pods. Everything claims it's running. It says 80. I'm actually curious if that'll forward. It might actually be erroring because this has it open and I don't think it's... Oh. Let's get rid of you again. Yes. So we've got a cluster IP, app equals test app, and no events. App is test app, okay. Everything should be jolly. No, we're not getting any logs. Why? PC2MR. That is interesting. No logs. Generally, there's some sort of log. Oh, you know what? Fine, we'll go this way. Nope, still no logs. All right, let's go to the service, test service. Maybe it was just the lack of permissions. Yeah. Okay, so now we're golden. Let's go to the forwarding. Let's delete you and delete you. Cleaned up, easy peasy. Hydration time. Oop, come back. All right, so basics, we've got our service, all well and good. So that's our basic definitions. What we're doing if I could stop yawning for a second. Oh, that was too much. All right. So this is basically just saying this service makes this port available and it reroutes requests to this port on the container. And in our case, same port, so no real difference there. Let's go back here. Let's move you out of the way so we can go down a little bit. So port definitions and pods have names, and you can reference them in the target port. Oh, interesting. So those can be the same. So you can instead use name for the target port. Learn something new. Yeesh, I got yawning like crazy today. Sometimes it just happens when you talk quickly, it will just like knock the wind out of you, and then suddenly you're yawning and your body's going, hey, get that oxygen back in me. When used with a corresponding set of endpoint slice objects without a selector, the service can abstract other kinds of backends. You might have an external database cluster in production, but in your test environment, you use your own. You want to point your service to a service in a different namespace. This is one of the ones I thought would be really interesting. Because there are instances where, specifically like when I was running Jenkins, or technically Jenkins is still running, but with Jenkins, I've basically decided to bypass all of the SSL and TLS. So instead of going out and then back in through the ingress, I just have it going to the Gatia service directly. I think it'd be rather interesting to have a service in the same namespace as Jenkins that would just do that redirect. So it would kind of say that this is going through this pipeline. It would also allow me to lock down with network policies a little bit more, I think. I don't know. Kicking it around in my brains ever since I first read that piece. You can define a service without specifying a selector. So this has no selector, but then what? Because the service has no selector, the corresponding endpoint slice and legacy endpoints are not created. So let's take a quick peek at that. So here's where I would do that, basically. A lot of these actually got to go, like that doesn't need to exist anymore. That I need to get back to someday. Test service, and it's 10 devices. So yeah, then you just set the endpoints to be elsewhere. That's kind of cool. When you create an endpoint slice, Endpoint slices are objects that represent a subset of the background of the backing network endpoints for a service. There's not a whole lot of, here, try this stuff in here. Provides a way to specify an application protocol for each service port. For some services, you need more than one port. So yeah, that would be let's just do it again. Helps if I can type. Equals 80, and I think it'll do this way. We want the name, which is going to be test2 service. Output equals YAML. We need try run equals client. Yeah, and then it just stacks them. File. And if we wanted to save this for later editing, there we go. Test2 service. That's everything we just did. Cool, right? It's one of the things that is really useful, especially just for trying to remember how a lot of these files are structured, is just the ability to generate them manually like that, and then you can go in and edit. Even if you can just do a completely basic blanket one that, you know, fill it full of information that you're not going to use, but at least you can go then and edit that and have the structure in place. Good habit to get into is just, you don't have to remember every single flag and every single switch on a on your command, as long as you can remember how the file's laid out. This is what I was talking about a little bit earlier, the different types of services. We've just been using cluster IP, which is kind of the default. It exposes just internal. The node port does get, it's kind of the cheap way of doing an ingress, if you will, because you're just giving it the IP address of the node that it's running on. As long as it doesn't get moved to another node, then hey, it'll get the job done, right? Load balancer, I use Metal LB, but basically it's going to call something else to do the job for you, and generally that's going to give it an external IP address as well, just in whatever way the load balancer that you've chosen does it, right? And the external name kind of relies on your DNS being set up properly. Mine, I've got my DNS is set up around the idea of Nginx being used for ingress. So I have two wildcard domains. They both have one, so it's one.dev.connectedme.com and one.connectedme.com, and they just point to Nginx, to the Nginx ingress, and that then handles sending it where it's got to go. It also helps with TLS and all that sort of stuff. So basically, I only use load balancer and cluster IP myself. You'll see node port get used quite a bit as well, though. If you have an existing DNS entry, you can reuse that. So you have spec cluster IP. Oh, okay. So that's if you're using node port or something like that. Well, no, that doesn't make sense. Maybe you've set a static DNS entry on Kubernetes internal core DNS server. Is probably what that's referring to, I'm guessing. And I guess you could configure it to use an external DNS too, but I don't know why you would. I don't know. I can't think of what that use case would be. On node port, if you set the type to node port. Oh yeah, that's the other part about node port. It needs a really high port on that particular node because everything else is assumed to be taken. And it reports it there. I wonder if you can set it there as well. Yeah, this is what I see commonly is that they'll use node port and then you can set a node affinity, or honestly just have the have your load balancer hit particular nodes within a particular range for an application. So like, let's look at what that looks like. We'll do what it's got here. Not you, you. So same thing, control, create, we want service. Node port. Let's look at what the help file says here. Not a whole lot, just name and then where we're pointing it. So for them, they have a node port of 30,007. They've got target and port. Let's see what this looks like. So we're going to call it node port service, and we want TCP. We're going to do the same thing, 80 and 80. Let's try their number. And try run equals client and output YAML, right? All right, yeah, it didn't like the node port. So we've got TCP. What do you mean? It's right there. Oh no! Oh, because there's node dashport, of course. And there we go. So we end up with the same thing. Let's boom. We're gonna put you out. Node port service.yaml. Let's edit you so that the app is test app. We'll get rid of the other service first. And same deal. Right. And apply. And let's see what that looks like on this end. Node point service. It's kind of funny that it still has forward, but it should just open. Yeah. Nope, that's still forwarding. That's not what we want. So let's go back over to port forwarding. Should be able to go to yeah, there we go. And that's what you expect with that. In theory, because we have one on each one, we should be able to go to dev mini 1, dev mini 2, and dev mini 3. Same thing all across the board. All right, next in the list. Now we're only 30 minutes in and already burned through half of this. So here it's just saying to reserve them. I don't think that's something. Oh, okay, so you can change the proxy, but that's, I mean, essentially it's just saying don't use that more than once. Don't create collisions. Not a great idea. Load balancer is fairly straightforward as well. It's kind of funny that load balancer uses ingress, but it's not it is a method of ingress, but it's not ingress. So let's look at that. Was that on our list of what create can do? Does not look like it. So, oh wait, be nice if I did that right. Right. Create service -h. There we go. Load balancer. I feel like whoever wrote all of these just copied and pasted at this point, right? Your output, this is all basically the same stuff. TCP. And then options, but it doesn't really tell you what the options are here. That's okay, because we can look at how that goes right here. My load balancer, TCP equals 80 and 80. Same deal, nothing new there. Dry run client, because we just want to output YAML and see what that looks like. So it's got the type of load balancer, type load balancer, although it puts it under status. I'm looking at type. It doesn't have cluster IP. It doesn't put that in there. And that's kind of it. That's super useful, right? Let's see if we can't suss a little bit extra out of here with some tab. Haha. All right, we can get TCP warnings token. We're not worried about TLS. Why is that coming up? Context cluster client as. No, okay, nothing new there. Yep, I deleted it. Okay. We want to TCP, oops, ILB, TCP 8080, try run client, output YAML. Put it in my load balancer .yaml. Wait, what? Oh, no. Unknown flag. Load bal. No, got that balancer. What are you talking about? Am I create load balancer? Oh, create service load balancer. The details, I have the attentions. All right, back in it. Okay, there we go. We don't need the timestamp. Let's get rid of that. We'll change this to test app. Same thing. Test app. Now, in my case, because I'm using Metal LB and I've got it set up as the default load balancer, it's going to take over, in theory. Actually, let's take a look at that real quick, just as a comparison. So if I go to my services here, let's find one that has an IP, Jenkins, and let's look at what that looks like. So it has a name, has a namespace. We have our annotations. Now this specifically tells Metal LB, hey, I want to pick it from this group of IPs that I've already defined. Managed fields don't matter. Status, load balancer ingress, and then the IP address. And then the cluster IPs get filled in on their own. And that's, I mean, it really is just that. Once you have the load balancer set up and in place, it's going to take care of a lot of the stuff for you. That's kind of the good thing about Kubernetes in general. Like if you've got, once you get certain pieces set up, it handles it for you, and it's kind of nice. I mean, you handled it for you to start with, but you know, it's one of the best parts about, in my mind, Homelabbing with Kubernetes, because in a lot of cases prior to using a cluster, I would set something up, and then when I'm building my next virtual machine or whatever, I'd have to look at it and figure out, like, wait a minute, okay, what did I do last time? How do I change this? How do I make this work like I did last time? Because I wasn't doing documentation. I wasn't keeping track of it. I was just doing it for, you know, my own experience and my own entertainment. entertainment mostly. Whereas here, you set it once, and the hardest part is if you manage to crash your cluster. And you're like, wow, how did I do all of that stuff? But like right now, I probably couldn't set up a load balancer from memory, but it would be a little bit easier than the first 3 times I did it. So let's look at what this is going to look like. Let's get rid of that other service real quick. That is... Where'd you go? You are node port. Node port. Yeah. Bye. Alright, so now node port is gone. Let's try just applying this guy and see what happens. Just as is. Here we go. My load balancer, it grabbed the next available one, 105. I didn't think 105 was available, but it grabbed the next available one. And now, if I go to that IP, did I do that right? 10.2.100.105. Why are you going to 31922? Did I miss a step in there? Shouldn't be going to 31922. Port 80 target there. I don't know, that should be that. Oh. Well, there's your problem. And pal, it works. Of course I defaulted to HTTPS. Why wouldn't I? Get rid of you. Let's clean up. Go away. So yeah, I mean, in a nutshell, that's defining a load balancer. Like I said, it comes down to it's going to grab whatever you've set as a load balancer. And in my case, I'm using Metal LB. It's a little bit heavy, a little bit rebooty, but it does what I want it to do, and it does it easily. If that makes sense. We can kind of look in here at some of the stuff that I have set up. Most of it is fairly basic, really. Status isn't needed. Yeah, so you have a couple of args that you got to throw at it. Webhook server. I don't even think, yeah, most of this wasn't even that difficult. Just keeping that to the point of all of these doing what they need to do, and then you can jump in down here. Metal LB, and IP address pool. Like I said, I've got the annotation there, so it would pull from the first pool, and it would be somewhere in this range. That's why I pulled 105. Actually, you know what I didn't see? Let's apply that again real quick. Because it is the default, I don't remember if it adds the annotation on its own. Yeah. So yeah, because that's the default pool, it's going to automatically add the annotation to say, hey, pull from this pool. Cool. one of the interesting things that I ran into was with Metal LB and its method for actually sharing an IP address. It has the ability to create a key that just says, hey, these pods can all respond on this IP address with different ports. And that's what I have set up on Gatia. So I have the SSH ingress, and then I have the standard HTTP. And in theory, they're actually sharing an IP address. The 104, because 104 is actually my ingress controller. That's what Nginx uses. And since it's on a wildcard DNS entry, the Nginx is going to recognize, oh yeah, it's supposed to go to that server, but then the load balancer would say, well, that's not the port that's available on this server, because 3000 is what's available on this server. So this makes it so that it shares. And you basically you set up a key right here, sharing key, and it allows them to talk to each other. It's kind of nice. All right, before we move on, quick break for me. Once. We're back. All right. So where were we? Load balancers. We just wrapped that up. By default, load balancer types of services. When there's more than one port defined, all ports must have the same protocol. The protocol must be one which is supported by the cloud provider. The feature gate mixed protocol load balancer service. That I would say was one of the more interesting parts with regards to using containers instead of full-fledged virtual devices. The concept of having to kind of define in advance what ports are available as opposed to blocking everything and then specifically making certain ones available. Like, having that in place from the beginning was a weird transition for my brain. Disabling load balancer node port. Oh. Can optionally disable node port allocation for a service type of load balancer. Specifying class of load balancer. Okay. Specifying IP mode of load balancer. And then definitions of different types of load balancers depending on who you're using. But we're using vanilla K8s. Now the external name is, like I said, it's a map specifically to DNS. I think by default it uses the internal DNS. Let's see. A service of type external name accepts an IPv4 address string but treats that string as a DNS name comprised of digits. Yeah. When looking up the host, my service prod service cluster local, the cluster DNS returns a CNAME with the value of this. Accessing my service works in the same way. Host name used by clients inside your cluster is different from the name that the external name references. In this case, you can create a headless service by specifying none. Yeah, we are definitely almost done with services. For a headless service, a cluster IP is not allocated. Kubernetes does not handle these services, and there's no load balancing or proxying. A headless service allows a client to connect to whichever pod it prefers directly. Services that are headless don't configure routes, packet forwarding, blah, blah, blah. How DNS is automatically configured depends on whether the service has selector defined. For headless services that define selectors, I know, reading. So much fun. That do not define selectors, the control plane does not create endpoint slice objects. However, the DNS system looks for and configures. DNS records for all IP addresses of the services, ready endpoints for all service types other than external name. For clients running inside your cluster, Kubernetes supports two primary modes of finding a service. Environment variables. When a pod is run on a node, the kubelet adds a set of environment variables for each active service. It adds service name underscore service host and service name underscore service port variables. So if the service is called Redis primary, so let's take a look at what that looks like. Boom, boom, boom. We want to go here. We're going to go into one of these pods. Not these pods. One of these pods. So yeah, there we go. I mean, I'm sure that's not a security risk. Although realistically, if you get in far enough, if you get this far, there's already an issue. I mean, you're already root on a device. And if I remember right, is it star.cer? Where does it put that? Something hidden in here. Let's see. No, it's not the certificate. I need the container key. Yeah, there run secrets. So, in theory, that token file that token file right there has access to everything that's in this namespace. So if you can get Kubi control on this device, which, I mean, let's look at the way that I've got it. Nope, wget's not there. That's a plus. A lot of those tools aren't there. That's good. FTP? Nope. So you would have to use Nginx, since it's already kind of a reverse proxy. You would be exporting, you'd be using sed. To modify this to probably this one. Where's sites available? Modules. Yeah, there we go. You'd basically just create a server that allows an upload. Should be fairly easy. Not that I'm going to do it here. But I mean, since you already have this access and your root, you start getting all kinds of other fun stuff. And because of all these other services, you kind of already know where to start looking for where to break out. The Kubernetes source, that's going to be useful. Jenkins, homepage, home, maybe. Docker registry could be interesting for you. Actually, Jenkins would probably be the most interesting because in general, a build server has to have certain access rights. And if it doesn't actually have the rights, it has the ability to create things that should have the rights. So that would be my next step. Of course, oh, ping's not there. Pivoting off of this, SSH, nope. You'd have to get a lot of tools on there. This is interesting. I'm on it. It doesn't have SSH. Doesn't even have top. Okay. No PS. Wow. It's proper locked down. I like it. Where would I find? Just tells me it's dev services. Well, that's neither here nor there. That's not what I'm here for right now. But I would start looking up, what version of Nginx is it running? It's pretty obvious that I'm in a container. So what are the known issues with this particular container version, etc., etc. Gives you more to attack. Where was I? Oh yeah, we were wrapping up with services. So yeah, I just wanted to validate that this was true. You can, it almost always should, set up DNS. What do they have for add-ons? Oh, this is, okay. So do they have core DNS? Yeah. I always thought core DNS was just standard. It seems like it's always there. Traffic policies. Traffic distribution. Interesting. Okay. I mean, I think I'm on 1.29, so that doesn't really play into it. Yeah. Doesn't really do anything for me just yet, and I'm not looking at updating for the moment. So service, oh, and this is, honestly, it's a bit like node port, but it's the same sort of deal. Well, not quite the same. It's like node port, but it gives you the ability to go with a lower port number. The gist of it. And yeah, that's services. Was that as fun for you as it was for me? Happy little services. On to ingresses. So let's make sure we've cleaned up our services. I should honestly clear all of these out. The majority of them aren't used, but it's nice to be able to just spin them up when need be. General. Yeah, set this aside real quick. Pow. Okay, exit here. Put all of this stuff away. Let's look at what this has. So this has name and rule. This will be another thing like with the metal LB that I have set up, because I have Nginx set up and I have it set as default ingress. I won't need to put it in here, but what you want is a class in there specifically calling it out. I don't know if, yeah, this has the class. So you can specifically define, hey, I want to run using my Nginx, well, whatever I named my Nginx ingress controller, right? You can name it other things, whatever. So class would be default. This is default backend. Default service for a backend in form of service name and port. I'm not sure what that is. We'll get to it. What is ingress? Kind of straightforward, right? If you've gone this far, ingress is just one more thing to put in front of a service that handles routing, essentially. The picture's worth 1,000 words. All right, so let's look at, this is called minimal ingress. Let's figure, what's this gonna look like if we want to rewrite this in command line. So we're gonna create an ingress called minimal ingress. We don't have any annotations, although you should be able to. If I remember right, there's a general thing. Yeah, you can annotate it after the fact. But it's all update. It'd be nice if you could just --a, right? But anyway, all right, so we're creating an ingress, minimal ingress, and then we want the class. In this case, it says Nginx example, although for mine it's just Nginx. And then we create a rule right here. And it's host path. What does it have host path? I think it's think all I really need is path. In this case, because they don't have host included. Unless the host is the service. Test app, test path. And then 80. Try run. Try run. Client and output. YAML. Should be in format. Yeah, no, I had it right. Rule equals, oops. So service name, path type is exact. Whereas they've got a prefix. Can I set? Path containing a leading star. Oh, okay. That's the problem. Star. Rules. Where does that star go to make it prefix? It's not there. It still has a path type of exact. Let's see. What else do we got here? Paths containing a leading character asterisk are considered path type prefix. Do I put the star here? There we go. Told you I'd find it. So that's how you change the path type. The only thing that we have that's extra is the host. We use API space. Okay. Can I leave host out of this? Pow. There we are. And we've recreated it. Kind is ingress. We've got the name. We don't have the annotations. Let's look at that. Add field to dry run. No, there we go. Okay, so yeah, you just have to do the overrides. So let's look at that real quick. I should practice more with the overrides. All right, so let's look at that. It's going to be under metadata annotations. right? Oops. Again. Now in this case, we're looking at this. I don't know if it needs that V1. Parse error, near. Oh, well, that narrows it down. Let's do the API version 2. Why not? Dum, 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 dum. I didn't like that. All right, so let's compare this. Oh, I see. My bad. Hell. I mean, of course it's my bad. How many times am I going to say that? It's my bad. Because it is my bad. It's not your bad. Hope not. It's equal. Template string or path? No. Output field. Does it not have? Reread, comprehend, but it doesn't have overrides. Still, reread, comprehend. So to get our annotations, we want just that. Is that going to be enough? Wait, what? Oh, annotation. Singular. There we go. Now we have a perfect match. How fun is that? And let's put it out into .yaml. And I do have to say, get off of there, you. As an enlightened player, putting in, I guess I should say at this point, ex-enlightened player. I haven't played in a long time, but as an ex-enlightened player, saying ingress this much is making me happy in a weird place in my brain. So there we go. Now we've matched up with the minimal that they've created, and we've done it in command line primarily, other than sneaking off to GitHub for the briefest of seconds. We got it. All right, so continuing along. check the specified action in all. Oh, that's annotations. We're over here. Whoops. So the rules, this is basically just saying how the rules need to be structured. Default backend. An ingress with no rules sends all traffic to a default backend. Okay. I don't think I have a default backend configured, which is kind of funny. Is there... Yeah, let's create a default backend rule. We'll copy to default. All right. Let's edit this guy up. We can basically clear, well, we can leave rules, right? We're just adding. Backend is, in this case, one word. No special camel case there. Resource API group. So is there a list of what these resources are? Is that down here? API, okay. That's just the description. What kinds of default backends can I use? Default backend is not set. Okay, that's not incredibly useful. Let's look for the word default in here. Nope. So where's the list of default backends? Or what sort of resources can be used for a default backend? Let's see what we can find. Oops, let's say want ingress. Default backend resource types. Ingress resources are used to proxy layer 7 traffic to containers. Okay. Let's see what they say. Never heard of Loft Labs, but let's see what they got. Annotations, config map, redirects, redirect timeout. No, these are all annotations. These aren't what, oh, here we go. Default backend. Here's an example. Wow. This is kind of painful to read. Default backend service rule. Wait. Okay, so that's an annotation, but it doesn't put it at this level. So, nope, that's not what I'm after. I mean, it seems to me if it's got kind storage bucket, that means we could basically run it against any of the kinds, right? So let's see. If I go here, I think it's supposed to be pointing internally. Yeah, that's what I thought. So it's assuming that your cluster is example.com. All right, we'll just put a pin in that for now, I think. But let's set it up like it says. API group is kind storage bucket name static assets. Let's take a look at what that does. So that created, okay, resource backends are not supported. So I have that disabled. It's one way to find that out. So let's burn you down, because it seems like you want to point it at a service, not a resource. Anyway. So let's look at the specific path types. Moving on from the thing that we'll put a pin in. Pink. Oh, no, that's not what we want. Pink. That's what we want. So let's look at here. Nanny. Nanny. Nano. Nano. Yeah. So we don't have a host because it's asterisk. And this kind of gives you an idea of what matches. I can treat this as a separate path type, or treat it identically to prefix or exact. So it's either got its own or it doesn't. Matches based on a URL path, prefix. So prefix split by this. Matching is case sensitive and done on a path element. So if your prefix is this, all paths. Exact, obviously. Exact, no. Exact, also no. Interesting. Obviously in reverse as well. Yeah, I usually use prefix because of that very reason right there. I want to be able to put things underneath it. I'm sure you do too. Same here, cool. Also makes sense. Ignores the trailing slash, okay. Matches on the trailing slash because it is a prefix. Anything afterwards should be fine. subpath, yep. Yeah, and that wouldn't because that creates a different prefix. Prefix is / or AAA. And then, yeah, match the AAA. I mean, it's a cool chart. Makes sense. Would read again. Hosts can be precise or wildcards. So yeah, in this instance, I would do, because I've already got a wildcard, having a wildcard with a wildcard can be weird, but it is something that you can do in the instance of, say, setting up a blog server and you want everyone to have their own prefix or whatever without having a separate app, right? So it makes sense. No match, only a single DNS. No match only covers a single DNS, which is anything beforehand. So setting up the different hosts, the ingress class, this is what happens when I put an ingress in. It automatically grabs the default class, which is Nginx, and goes from there. And that can be set up. It's pretty straightforward. Nginx, no, Nginx. Ingress, and I think I thought it was under classes. Oh yeah, here we go. It's already set as default. It's not set as default. Really? I thought it was. Who knew? Let me make sure I'm not crazy. No, I don't have it set as default. That's fun. Let's see what happens. Now when I look at it, is default class true? I mean, that's generally what you'll see there. Really thought I had set it as default. Yeah, what are you gonna do? I blame viewers like you. All right, so now this is where we set up an ingress class, load balancer. It says which controller. I think in this case, yeah, the idea is that this is outside. But I don't know if this works just as is, even if you had something at example.com. Ingress class scope. Let's hop back over here. Do we have a scope? Where is our scope located? Annotation, true. Won't be under managed fields. We don't have scope defined, so where does scope show up here? Should be under spec. So what's the default? You may be able to use this. Oh yeah, the default scope is cluster wide, so yes, I have a scope and it is cluster wide. If you set the spec parameters field, then don't set spec parameters scope. Or if you set scope to cluster, there is, so I've done a lot of talking about Nginx ingress. This one. But I know a lot of people really enjoy working with this one. At some point, now that I have a default and a secondary, I may get into it. But it ends up being fairly straightforward. This is the part that I'm kind of interested in. I've got my own Acme server that runs in the cluster already, and I think it'd be kind of interesting just to see what it looks like using this versus using this to get that set up. Within my environment, if I go to ingresses, everything is HTTPS, and I don't even need to go there. Let me just clear this pile. And if I add this annotation, because of the cert manager webhook, it'll just automatically go and create the certificate for this particular instance and add it to the Nginx ingress controller, which is kind of nice. It actually also refreshes it every day for me as well. Saves my life. Like, this guy's got to go. I was just trying to compare Let's Encrypt to my own settings. Note the metadata name needs to be different. Yeah. But we're back over here. Out of controllers. So namespace it looks like is kind of new. That's kind of nice though, because there are instances where you want to make sure that your ingress is only available to certain tenants or certain namespaces. Be kind of useful. Depreciated. Ingress class name. Yeah, new ingresses without an ingress class name will be assigned to that one. But at most one. Yeah, you don't want more than one default. Weird. I'm shocked and amazed, aren't you? Because why not? Oh, interesting. That makes sense, though. I don't have my bots chat showing up on screen. Where are we? Here we go. Ingress backed by a single service. There are existing Kubernetes concepts that allow you to expose a single service. You can do this with an ingress by specifying a default backend with no rules. So yeah, you're just pointing it at a service. I wonder what that looks like. is the IP allocated by the ingress controller. It doesn't seem like it's... That doesn't seem like it's an ingress. Sorry, need to finish my conversation, my internal conversation there. So if it's an ingress and it gives an internal IP address, I guess it would be like an ingress just into the namespace, which a service already is. Not sure I'm understanding the purpose behind that. By the time you see the address listed as pending. All right, simple fan out. Pretty straightforward. If you have a single application, just send it out. I've actually thought about doing a single address in this method. So like just internal.connectedme.com and then /getia/home/whatever, and just make it so it goes that direction. I don't know how I feel about it, but might be a little easier to remember. Or I could just have /home and then, or I could have a homepage or homar just be the base one and then each one just come off of that. Name-based virtual hosting, foo.bar.com. So does that mean, in this case, yeah, each rule just has a different host. That'd be the same sort of idea, in theory. Because I already have the asterisk, I could get away with a single ingress that takes care of all of them. I mean, at the end of the day, that's kind of what happens anyway, but if you create an ingress without any host defined, then any web traffic to the IP address of your ingress controller can be matched without a name-based virtual host being required. For first to service 1 and second to service 2. Oh, okay. Without any host defined. Create an ingress resource without any host defined in the rules. What is it trying to say there? Because there are hosts defined in the rules. Doesn't match first and second. Oh, okay. So it creates a default path. Scroll farther. TLS, if you want to add your own. TLS will not work on the default rule because the certificates would have to be issued for all possible subdomains. Yep. Yeah, this part always trips me up. I always forget that I have to define it separately. And then I go back and go, oh yeah, whoops. So an ingress controller is bootstrapped with some load balancing policy settings. That's probably one of the things that I need to change to get Getia properly load balancing. Actually, why not? Squirrel. Wait, I have it open right here. Let's search. It's HTTPS technically, but this no, this goes into the configuration file. This is not the load balancer or the ingress controller. I'm not going to use Nginx Plus. That's not happening, right? And maybe that's what I need to make it happen. See, it's got a stack. Admin can only connect there. It has the following differences. Configure reloads. See, I'm figuring that there's got to be probably an annotation just to trick it into saying, hey, cache those credentials, right? Is a Kubernetes controller. I mean, I understand why it's not working. I just want to know what you need me to add. TLS and keys, CAs. It's probably the JWKs. Maybe that's what I need. That's probably what I need. I would bet. But now that I have that open, I've got something to poke around in. To add a new host. It's all kind of straightforward stuff. Ingress handled. Ingress controllers is pretty short. We already kind of covered it. I'm going to utilize this little break in the action to take a quick break myself. 1 second. Back again. All right, so looks like a lot of this is just going to be different types of controllers. There's way more than I thought there were. I should have known that, but you know. Ngrok. Wait a minute. Is this actual Ngrok? Yeah. I have a recruiter friend that works for them. Maybe I should try that for that, just for her, right? Send her a message when I'm doing it. But not right now. Good thing I didn't sneeze in anyone's ear again. All right. So using multiple, just have to make sure there's classes. Cool. Gateway API. Make network services available by using the status of truth. This is something I haven't delved into. This might be more than I want to deal with right now. So gateway, enable class, example.com, gateway controller. Okay. So gateway class name, example class, listens HTTP 80. Okay. Since the addresses field is unspecified, an address or host name is assigned to the gateway by the implementation's controller. This address is used as a network endpoint for processing traffic. Well, hey, let's take a look, right? First things first, does it show up in our handy dandy create? Deployment, it does not. So how would we go about creating a gateway? It's under networking. Let's see, get. Okay. Network policies, network sets. So I don't have any gateways. All right, let's just, is there a version attached to this that I missed? Gateway API is an add-on. Oh, okay. I probably don't have it installed, and that's all there is to that. Sometimes reread, comprehend. Endpoint slices, we kind of went over that a little bit. Basically saying which endpoints go where, host name. Endpoint slice contains a reference to a set of network endpoints. The serving condition is almost identical to ready. Consumers of the endpoint should check the serving condition if they care about readiness. Okay. Says it's terminating. The original endpoints API provided a simple and straightforward way of tracking network endpoints. Scaling to larger numbers of network endpoints. Some uses weren't well served when a service had a lot of back-end endpoints and the workload was either scaling frequently or rolling out new changes frequently. Each update meant a lot of traffic. Okay. So it was to cut down on the amount of traffic and the size of the endpoint file manifests probably on the back end. Cool. Network policies is kind of a big thing all on its own. Am I going to be able to burn through this in an hour? This is basically firewall madness. And we've done firewalls, haven't we? There's two sorts of isolation for a pod. Isolation for egress and ingress. Is network policy in create? No, we already checked. So one of the things that's super important to like kind of keep track of is stuff like this, like network policy. What was the other one that we had? No, ingress is in here, right? Yeah, because it is a service. No, it's just right there flopping around on its own. But when you have those, you can use kubectl to make the files for you. And then you don't have to worry about remembering how it's laid out. And in a lot of cases, the more complex ones, like network policy, don't seem to have that. Maybe there's something else under here. Like, let's think about it. It's not a token. It's not a service account. It's not a secret. It's definitely not a role. Role binding quota, maybe? Did I spell that wrong? Take replication service and expose it. Not what we're looking for. Although, let's look at what we have in there. So we can get the API resources, API versions, apply. Apply allows you to write all the stuff out by hand if you really wanted to. Modify certificate, cluster info completion. Copy, create. All right, so create is from file or standard in. Apply is from filers. Let's look at apply. What's under apply? I mean, I've only really used it for files. Customization. Wow, that is a risky click right there. Delete all other config maps that are not okay. Nope, not what I'm after. Train, edit. Options, patching, plugin. Maybe it's under plugin. Scale set. Nope. Dash H. What do we got? Available commands. List. No, that's not what I'm looking for either. So my only hope would be I would need a network policy. We would want to do what is the dash for all namespaces? I haven't used it in so long. I used to use it all the time because I was just lazy. Thought it was dash dash A. It has, oh, you know what it is? Single dash capital A. There we go. So I would need to then do describe and now I need to do dash A dash O wide because what I want namespace. Oh, namespace was right here. So then dash in Calico API server. We want get network policies. Output YAML. There we go. I mean, I guess that kind of gives a template to work off of, sort of. I mean, let's compare that to this. We get the API version. Cool. We find out that it's a network policy. Great. Metadata, we have the name and the namespace. Cool. Spec. We have a pod selector. Nice. A little bit different than what they have, but it's a match labels. They have API server role. So if you've got a label of role on your app, then you're golden. Cool, cool. And then we have our spec, pod selector, policy type. In this case, ingress. You can probably remember that the other one is egress. And then you just have to define specifically ingress ports and the froms and tos. Cool. Am I going to do any of that right now? No. So let's hop over to DNS. Well, you know what? I should go back and do it. Part of the point of going back and doing all of these from the basic level is just keep doing it. Do it over and over and over again so that you remember how to do it. And the you in this case is actually we. Hopefully someone seeing this goes, hey, that's right. So let's hop back over. Excuse me, swallowed wrong. Hop back over to network policies. So our required our API version, kind, and metadata. So we're going to use this as our template. Yoink. And let's start clearing out what we don't need. Everything needs an API, everything needs a kind, everything needs a metadata. Creation timestamp can go, generation can go. We'll be changing the name and the namespace. Owner references can all go. Source version UID gone. Afera. I'm going to put you in dev services. We're going to call our policy Nginx swarm stopper. All right, so first our policy types, we're going to do them both. Make sure we have it all. Match label, in this case, it's not API server. Although it has API server true, our label is app. And it is test app, I believe. Do you guys remember? I don't remember. Oh, dev services. It is app equals test app. Test app. All right, so we're only looking at things that say test app. Ingress is only allowed on port 80 TCP, but we want to be we want to do an IP range. Can I limit a port to an IP range? Let's see. Each rule allows traffic which matches both the from and ports section. Okay, so let's just take a look at this. So if I did ingress, validate what we're looking at here, from has to be down here because of the way that's labeled. IP block. We're going to say 10.1.24.0 whack 24. Oh wait, 25. So we're blocking that specifically. We don't need to worry about a namespace selector because we're already in a namespace. But we are matching labels here. But I think that's more so. So this is saying that DB why would DB have ingress from, I mean, of course it would be from front end. But why would it be blocking from the label of front end? This allows out. Okay, but this is specifically looking for that port. So in this case, this would mean that I shouldn't be able to get in to port 80. I wonder how that works with an ingress controller. Let's see. Ooh, didn't like it. Unknown field. So I have ingress, ports, oh. Wait, it has ports at the top level, so what I need is from ports. So it has ports at the same level after from. I don't like the way some of these are laid out sometimes. A little bonkers. Yeah, no, that's how I had it. So let me get you out of there. Oops. All right, so you've got from IP block. They have their namespace selector and their pod selector. And then it's like that. I mean, they have that reversed, but otherwise that should do it. Do you mean from is not spec ingress from? All right. Let's do this. I mean, I guarantee this is going to work, but Run. Client. I think I need server there. Yeah, so it worked fine there. So let's see, what are we missing? We have the API, we have the kind, we have the metadatas, spec, pod selector, match labels, app, and then we have our policy types. And we say ingress. I don't specifically have an egress, even though I do specifically say that I'm going to. Maybe that's related. All right, so ingress from IP block. I'm reading IP block as block this IP. It's the other way around. Posting this to the API server for your cluster will have no effect unless your chosen networking solution supports policy. Behavior of to and from selectors. There are 4 kinds of selectors that can be specified. Pod selector. So namespace selector would be useful for running apps across namespaces. This policy contains a single from connections from pods with the label role and in the namespace. But the following policy is different. Ingress from namespace selector, match labels, user Alice, pod selector, match labels, role client. It contains 2 elements in the from array. Oh, okay, so this is an and, this is or. That's not confusing. But let's go back. So here, that's saying and. Whereas here, it's saying or. Or no, here it's saying and as well. But it looks like, according to that, this is my problem. Yeah. So let's take a look. Oh, or not. The names. Okay, so contains a single from. Now, you know what? Let's try that. Let's we have ingress. Let's do that. That could be the issue, right? That is not the issue. Unknown field spec ingress pod selector. Spec ingress. That would mean no. Unknown field spec ingress from. Spec ingress from. Okay. These are always entertaining. And obviously somewhere that I need to spend more of my time. All right, so ingress from. Let's just get rid of everything else. And we'll swing back up here. See, this has pod selector, and then I think I'm getting confused about which pod selector I'm looking at. So let's put you back. Let's put pod selector back. And that is app and test app. All right, so we have ingress from. We have an IP block. And pod selector. So our IP block is CIDR. Oops. 10.1.25.0 WAC 24. We don't have an accept. Pod selector. We can't have the same pod selector because we need, obviously it's got to be coming from something else, right? So let's look. I was like, why don't I have any deployments? There's definitely deployments. We'll say this. coming. All right, and for now, we're going to take that back out because I don't want to write an egress. Unknown field. Spec ingress from. Let's take a look here. What is that supposed to be? Because this is making me a little bonkers. Spec. Am I missing rules? Cheap. If. Let's hop back over here real quick. Okay, they don't have rules either. Unknown field, service name. No, that's because that's an ingress. That's not what I want. Oh, that's what a lot of these are going to be. Yeah, I definitely prefer, like, say what you're doing. Don't just make it so that you can only do one. Oh, is this one of those? I'd be mad if that's what it is. Nope. Okay, good. Those ones where sometimes it requires 4 spaces. I thought I figured out the occasion when that happens, but no, it looks like this person's just double. Actually curious though now if was it this one? No. Because it believed that this would run. So let's do dev services. Let's make sure. All right. Just make sure I'm not going to block myself out of everything with it. So what's the deal? Network policies, there you are. It does become a 4 there. see what it looks like. From IP block. Here's a 4. Each of those are 4s. So let's see, pod. Oh well, that one's up. I did forget. Match labels. And then I have IP block. And it wants another 2. Invalid metadata name. Oh. Try to be good and camel case it, but they don't want camel case. I always forget that. There we go. So it just needs extra spaces. Eye roll of doom. Those are my least favorite, when occasionally something requires extra spaces. Let me just grab this real quick, because I'm curious. Well, let's, before we forget, bye-bye. So that's creating an array of objects that includes the ports objects and the from object. And that's where that starts. And all right, so what looks different here? Yeah, let's see. Bad indentation at line 10. Yeah, because oops, no, transfer. Why does that not look different? Oops. Copy. Pasta. That's not what I wanted. That's what I wanted. Well, let's just grab the whole thing. Why not? Into the stream or document is expected. Oh, whoops. I mean, that makes sense. All right, so ingress, boom, has an array of objects that includes from, where did ports go? That's not the same thing. Lesai, okay. Where did I copy? Oh, I copied from here, huh? No, did I? Oh yeah, 172, 172. Okay. The details, the details. Go away. All right, so let's bring it back. Ingress object. It still put me at from, but ports, bam. From are each an object, or each have an array of objects. And this one includes IP block, IP block, CIDR, accept. So getting rid of those spaces doesn't actually change the YAML. Just, I guess. Oh, wait. Well, no, ports. Yeah, ports is right there. So it's the same deal. This is where confusion always sets in. And I think it's pretty much always with network policies. Topology aware routing. By setting the annotation to auto. When there are enough endpoints available in each zone, topology hints will be populated on endpoint slices to allocate individual endpoints to specific zones. In a 3-zone cluster, this means 9 or more endpoints. I'm more like a 3-machine cluster. Well, I think before I dig too far into anything, I'm only really planning on being here for another 15 minutes, so that might be, this might be where I call it. Right? I mean, makes sense. do have to make a decision about whether or not I'm going to be online tomorrow. Probably not. I've looked at some of the videos of me playing games on my laptop, and that was bad. Yeah, I don't think I'll subject anyone to that slideshow and just call it good. So I won't be streaming tomorrow. Let's do that real quick. Where are you? Channel? Schedule. Uh, 26 to Monday. There we go. So that's at least updated. I think that's it for today. Hey. I zoned out for a second there. Like I said, been yawning. If you've been lurking, spent any time lurking, thanks. If you're watching this on demand, also thanks. If you made it through on YouTube, like and subscribe if you want to see more. If not, thanks for hanging on this long, and always remember, if you're not enjoying yourself, do something else, right? Wow. Have a good one.